Almost every day for the last 3 months, Anthropic has been coming out with new Claude updates. It's impossible to keep up with all of them. Every time you dive in and try to learn one, a new one comes out. So I went through all of them and distilled it to a list of 4 updates that I think are important for you to pick up and start diving in and implementing into your work and your systems now. So in this video, we're going to cover 4 updates: an update to Cowork Projects, scheduled tasks, an update to the skills, and dispatch. And I'm going to be running through each of these with my ecom business, the Golden Cod. Okay, so before we start, we're going to be running through each of these updates on a real business, which is my small ecom business. So it's the Golden Cod, and the Golden Cod is a small New England lifestyle brand that sells jewelry and apparel, just to give you an idea of what we're diving into. All right, and so the first update we're going to be working through is projects that are now available in Cowork. If you use Claude Chat, Projects has been around for a while, so it's the same thing that is in Chat, but just now it's available in Cowork. And this is really important because prior to this, memory was a serious issue in Cowork. So if you're to start a chat, it was just starting from scratch with no context. So now within Cowork, you can have a project, and that project can have a set of instructions. You can run scheduled tasks specific to that project. And then you can also have a chat history within a project. So it's just like the projects that are in Claude Chat, but just now it's available in Cowork, which is really powerful. All right, so in order to access projects, you just go to Cowork on the desktop app, and on the sidebar, there is a section for projects. So you just want to add project. And then there's 3 different ways you can create one. You can start one from scratch. But what's nice also is that you can actually import it from your chat, and then it'll take all of the instructions and files and context that you have in your chat. So that's really nice. And then you can also use an existing folder you have locally. So I actually tried both. So in a few videos back in December, I did a digital advertising campaign with Claude for the same Golden Cod business. So I was able to import that project from chat, which was great because that had a lot of context about brand identity and the products that we sell. And then also I was able to connect it to a project that I have locally on my laptop, which has information on orders and more detailed inventory data that I had covered in another video. So from both of those, I was able to create a new project specifically for the Golden Cod. So this is great because this is going to be my new home base for everything that I'm working on with Golden Cod. And what's awesome about this is you're just creating a bunch of context in the background, which you can then take anywhere outside of Claude too. All this is a bunch of MD files. And what's great about this is that, yes, you can use it in Cowork, but then you can also take it to ChatGPT if you want to do something in ChatGPT or maybe OpenClaw. So I think regardless of whatever tool you're using, having really built out detailed context with whatever agent you're working on is huge and really necessary at this point. So this is awesome that this is now available in Cowork. Okay, and then so I connected it to a folder on my laptop called Golden Cod, which had a bunch of files in it that I just mentioned. And on the side here, you can see the context and you can see what's in each folder. So I had a brand folder, and inside the brand folder, I had a visual identity deck and a brand reference document. So I had asked Cowork to go through and actually build out a proper brand identity markdown file because, like I said, now I can use this for a bunch of different agents, not just Cowork. So we can see that in the chat history here, but this was the chat that I had done that in. But basically, I just asked it to look through the 2 files that were already in there and build out a proper one. It asked me a few questions, and I filled in some gaps. We added information about our Instagram feed, the website, where the website's hosted, information about Shopify. And then at the end, I have a nice polished brand identity document that is all-encompassing. And I could edit this, but it really covered everything that I was looking for. So you have at a glance what the brand is, as well as the color, the font that we use, what apparel we use, and how our kind of past order performance has looked like, the logo, the voice and the tone, the do's and the don'ts. So this is great, and it's an all-encompassing brand identity now that anytime I come back here and work on anything with Golden Cod, I know that Claude has a really good understanding of the actual business. So then to show that it's working, I can just ask, what are the Golden Cod brand pillars? All right, and there we go. So it pulled the brand pillars exactly from the identity document, which is great. So this is now going to be super useful for any time I go to do anything with marketing, with social media, coming up with Instagram captions. I'll be able to fall back on this, and this is going to help a lot. And so that's it for projects. Nothing earth-shattering. Just the ability to have context now in Cowork is just going to help everything a lot better because context is everything dealing with these agents. Okay, and then next is scheduling recurring tasks. So this is where it's starting to get into the OpenClaw world. So a lot of these updates seem to have been trying to take pieces that are working really well in OpenClaw that people really like and implementing them directly in Claude. Now, I will say I don't think it is at this point, I think OpenClaw is a lot easier to work with after you get through the initial setup. But doing a lot of the recurring tasks like with cron jobs in OpenClaw at this point is definitely a little bit more powerful. There's a few limitations with the recurring tasks in Cowork, but as an example, the computer has to be on for it to run, which is the same for OpenClaw, but wherever you have your OpenClaw is set up is already running 24/7, but that is one limitation, but I still think it's useful. So some of the things that you can do with the scheduled tasks are the daily briefings. So I've been using this at work, which is really great because I have it connected to Office 365. So every morning it kicks off at 7 a.m. and I get a summary of all of the emails that need attention from the prior day. And then I also get a look into my calendar and my day ahead by looking at all the meetings on Teams and on Outlook. So at work, that's been really helpful for me. And then some other examples that you can do weekly reports, you can do recurring research, file organization, and team updates. So to set up a scheduled task, you just go to scheduled on the sidebar, and then you click new task. Before you click new task, this is also where if you were to try to set something reoccurring that you want to run every day, I mentioned that your computer does have to be on. Claude has a toggle here that you can keep your computer on. I haven't tried this yet, but feel free to try that out. Let me know how that goes. I'm not going to do that right now, but when you create the task, you name it, you give it the description, you give it the prompt, and then this is where you set the schedule. And then in more options, this is where you want to connect it to that folder that you had just created the project with. That way, when the task runs, it has all the context that you have going on in that project. So I'll be using the Golden Cod for this one. So I've already set one up, and what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to calculate the amount of sales tax that I have to give back to Massachusetts. So the way I'm doing that right now is downloading Excel files from Shopify. I was actually hoping that I could just have an API run and pull the sales information with this task, but Cowork didn't allow external API calls through its container. So that was, for the sake of this video, I'm just going to keep it, the first part initially manual, which is downloading the files. But what I did was I have 3 sales files for each month of the year so far. So if I open up March, you can see, like I mentioned, it's a small business, but we only had a few sales this month. But so I have the sale ID, and then if it was sold in Massachusetts or not, because those are the ones that I have to pay the tax on. So what I'm going to do with this with this scheduled task is I'm actually going to have it run a skill that I've already made. So that's the beauty of these two, is that you can reuse and reference skills in the actual recurring task. So if I go to the skill, so it's going to open up those Excel files, and then it's going to filter out the Massachusetts sales. And then it's going to make a new file labeled for which month it is with the amount that I have to pay Massachusetts. So that's the skill that I'm going to use. So back in the scheduled task, my instructions were really simple for this one. I just said run the Shopify data pull skill. And then I'm going to run this manually for now, but I have it set to run every Monday. It doesn't really make sense for this example because this is something I do monthly, but you get an idea of being able to run whatever tasks you have going on in your world. So I'll run that now. And then you can also see the history of these down below. So I had just run this one. You can kind of see everything here, but I'll go back to the one that's actually running now so we can follow along. And then so same as everything else in Cowork, but it has a progress bar, it comes up with a to-do list, and it has all the context that it's using. Okay, and there we have it. So it has the tax that I owe for each month, which is great. And then it created the 3 files, which we can see right here. So now I have one for January, February, and March. So that's great. And I think it's cool to be able to schedule these tasks, but I think the real limitation of having to have your computer on for it to run, I'm not sure exactly how helpful that is. But if you're doing something repeatedly, I think it is pretty cool. But the other thing that I could have just done is I could have just run the skill. So I think this is cool, and I can see how they're trying to take on some of the popular features that OpenClaw has right now. But right now, I just don't think this is the most useful thing, but it's still cool, and it's good to know that it's available. Okay, and so the next update that I want to cover is Claude improved its skill capability. So skill 2.0, they're calling it. And really the big update there is that in the skill builder, it'll run an eval after you've completed the skill to actually grade and see how well the skill actually ran. And then it will self-improve with that feedback. So I'm going to run through an example here. So I have downloaded all of my historical Instagram data from the Golden Cod's Instagram account. Okay, so we launched the business in 2020. So we, at this point now, have almost 6 years of history here. So we have 240 posts. And I just wanted to see what Claude can tell me about what has performed well, what hasn't performed well, and any takeaways that I can have to help me as we try to think about making new Instagram posts and coming up with a content calendar. Okay, so Instagram allows you to download your entire history. So I did that, and that gave me a JSON file to work with that had a lot of information on all the posts, and basically had every type of engagement metric you could ever want. So it went through and it created a report for me, which is really helpful. So it gave a high level summary, its biggest critical takeaways. This, no surprise here, but when we started really hot in 2020, we had a lot of time to put into it, but both my wife and I have been pulled in other directions. So we just haven't been able to dedicate as much time. And you can really just see the engagement and the post just dropped over the years. But that is something we are looking to address. But it gave what kind of content performs the best. And so this is really what I was looking for. So it says the behind the scenes content is the best type of content that we're putting out and people are engaging with. And then it went into the caption style and what was working and what wasn't working. And then what really it drilled down to is if people are saving it, that's a high likelihood that they're probably going to be buying. So it gave us examples of the highest saved posts. But yeah, so this gave a lot of great kind of analysis and takeaways on the entire history of our Instagram. And then, so what I want to do with the skill is I want to have a skill that uses this information to help us create new captions and create like a content calendar. And then, so because the Golden Cod project that we're working in right now has all of the context about Golden Cod, it has a bunch of files on all of our products with the product descriptions and the inventory that we currently have. So I asked it to give me 5 suggested Instagram captions for every single product that we have. And it went and did that. And then, so now I have a great kind of place to start. So like the Golden Cod snapback hat, it has 5 different captions, and then the idea for the actual image to post. So this is a really good start, but I want to turn this into a skill so I can keep going through the same process and come up with 5 suggested Instagram captions for an Instagram post that we're thinking about posting. So I'm going to ask it to create a Claude skill that uses the historical Instagram analysis that was performed, and then give me suggestions on an Instagram post I'm thinking about posting. I'll give you the image, you give me 5 suggested captions and why. All right, so it asked me a few questions before I started building the skill, so I'll just answer those really quick. Okay, so here's where the 2.0 is coming in with the evaluation. So it's creating test cases. So it's going in and it's pulling some of the product images from the export, which is actually really cool. So it has 3 test images that it's going to run through its evaluation. And then it is going to run the 6 tests. And so it's 3 with the skill, 3 without in parallel. It's going to grade it and then come back with the result. All right, so there we go. So the skill is created. So the last step to actually add it to your Claude is you have to copy it to your skills. So you click copy to your skills. And then to see your skills, you go to customize skills, and then you can see the skills that you have here. So here's our Instagram caption coach, which it was called. And then in the description, you can see how the skill is invoked. So this is saying whenever the user shares an image and wants caption ideas, if I say caption this, what should I write for a post, Instagram post ideas, help me with this post ideas. So all of those are going to kick off this skill. And then down below, we can actually see the full detail of the skill, so how to use the skill, the output format, and all the rest of the detail. So let's now go and try to use this skill to make sure that it's working. So I'm going to go back to the Golden Cod project. I'm going to start a new chat and I'm going to upload. All right, so I have an image I'm going to just paste in. All right, so what should the Instagram caption be for this? Okay, and then we can see it's running the skill, and then the context, it's running the Instagram caption coach skill that we just created. So we know that's working. And then we have the results. So we have 5 captions. We have the caption and why this caption works based off of the historical data. So this is great. And so I think out of all the updates, it's really easy on X, like your feeds and YouTube, it's filled with hype. Oh my God, like Anthropic just came out with this new update. This is going to change everything. I don't think that's the case for the majority of these. But I do think skills are extremely important. And I think if you're trying to do anything with automating or making whatever you're doing more efficient, skills are a huge piece of that. So skills are, I don't think, overhyped enough. Like I think these are huge and really powerful. So they're definitely worth diving in and learning how you can use them and get them into your processes. Okay, and then lastly is dispatch. So dispatch is Also available within Cowork. It's on the sidebar. You go to dispatch. And then it's really easy to set up. You just click a button, you do it from your laptop, but then you also have to do it from your phone. So what Dispatch does is it allows you to text in a single thread to Cowork from your phone. And so this is different than just chatting in your mobile app with Claude. This is actually looking and has the ability to take action within Cowork and all the files that it has access to on in your projects. And so this is where projects also comes in, because you can put context into a container, and then so you can reference that from your phone, which is great. It also has computer use, and I'm not going to get into that right now. Both of these, being able to text and then being able to use your computer from your phone, is also similar to OpenClaw, and so it's clear that Anthropic's trying to keep up with what OpenClaw is pushing. But I think right now the browser, the computer use that seems a little bit more on the gimmicky side right now. There's you get a lot of pop-up windows to accept and allow. So I think right now I really couldn't find anything that was useful. It's also really slow. So if it's clicking around, it just takes a long time. I'm sure that's going to get a lot better over time. But right now, I didn't think it was that useful. But dispatch and being able to text, I actually do think there could be some use cases there. What I did was, to test this out, earlier I had run that tax example. So from my phone, after I had set dispatch up, I just opened up. Actually, I'm just going to switch over to my phone so you can actually see what it looks like from the phone. Okay, so I am in my Claude app on my phone. So there is a dispatch section in the sidebar, so you go to there. So one of the limitations is that it is just one continuous thread. So the more you chat, this is just going to keep blowing up. So it's not like you can have separate conversations. So it's just one continuous thread. So the first thing that I tried to test out was if it could pull information from the files that Cowork has on my computer. So we ran that sales tax example earlier, and I asked it to pull the tax numbers from that project that we did, and it said it didn't have access. So then I just pointed into the direction of the Golden Cod folder, and I said that there's a Golden Cod folder, there's a Golden Cod Cowork project. So then it was able to pull it up, and I got it exactly. So we can also just try this again really quick. Let's see if it can pull the 5 Instagram captions that it just recommended. All right, so it looks like it was able to pull that. The Golden Cod has always been. Yep. And then so these match up to, definitely these are the ones. So that is really cool. There's some things where I'm not exactly sure what the use case would be, because yes, I'm able to access the files that are in the Cowork project, but I can, like, realistically, I think those files would ideally be saved in the cloud somewhere. So I'd be able to access them on my phone anyways through Google Drive or whatever cloud service I'm using. But I think maybe what I'm envisioning is if I'm in my way to work, I can just set off a skill, or I can set off something within Cowork to be ready for me by the time I get to my office. I think that would be really helpful, and that would be really cool. And I could see that being a use case here, but definitely cool, still in the early stages and some limitations. But I am definitely curious to see if any of you are using this and you have some cool use cases, because I'm really interested to see how people are using this. Okay, so that's the 4 updates that I wanted to cover. So to recap really quickly, Cowork Projects, I think, is very helpful within Cowork. It takes all the context and everything that you could do with the chat projects, but now you have that ability in Cowork, which I think is huge. Schedule tasks, also really cool. Definitely limited on having to have your computer on 24/7, but definitely something to try. Skills, I think, is the thing that it can't be overhyped enough. I think skills are huge, and it's definitely something that you want to learn. So it's a skill that you want to have to be able to build skills and know how to use them in your workflows. So I think that's actually really important. And then dispatch is cool right now. I just don't think it's fully there yet. It's still very early, but I'm sure that will get there too. And then, so as I mentioned, so it is really hard to get this huge wave of every single day. All these different AI models are coming out with all these updates. Like, how do you stay on top of this? One of the resources that I have found on YouTube that has been insanely helpful for me is Ben AI. So I think part of the problem is that everyone tries to hype everything to try to grab your attention, which is the whole point of YouTube and X. But my experience with this channel, with Ben AI's channel, he really breaks it down, doesn't overhype anything, and you really have something tangible going through his videos. So he's been a huge asset. So I definitely recommend you guys watching his channel to stay on top of everything. Recently, he's been pretty focused on Claude. So staying on top of Claude, I think, is a really good resource. But as always, thank you very much for watching the video. If you liked it, please leave a subscribe and let me know if you are using any of these. I'm really curious on the dispatch side of things, how people are using them. So please let me know. I'll see you in the next one.